Exodus story. And the Exodus story is really the story of, or begins with the person of Moses. And Moses is what we would, I think I would call a basket case, really. Okay, it's good. You see, as a child, Moses was just a few months old, and he was placed in a basket sealed with tar, and he was placed in the River Nile. His parents did this because the Pharaoh had determined that he would do everything possible to decrease the population of the Hebrew people. So he decided to kill all the babies who were born that were male. And Moses is found in this basket by Pharaoh's daughter. And he's later adopted, and he grows up in Pharaoh's palace. At some point, Moses observes an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave, and he reacts really violently to this, and he kills the Egyptian. And so he runs off, he leaves Egypt as a fugitive, and he escapes to the desert, where he meets a community who later become his family as he marries the chief's daughter. He becomes a shepherd in the desert, and he does this shepherding in the wilderness for 40 years. And during this time, the people of Israel, they cry out to God for deliverance. They're enslaved. And God hears them, and he appears to Moses in the desert through a burning bush. And that is where I want us to come to the story today. And Gareth is just going to come and read a short passage from the book of Exodus.
Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them out of the land into the good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites have reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now, go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you. Amen.
Thank you, Gareth. You know, it's such a familiar story, isn't it? We've got the Prince of Egypt film where it's all kind of singing and dancing and let my people go. Or there's the more recent Ridley Scott film, The Exodus, God and Kings. And this story has been told again and again and again. But these films, I would say, are largely inaccurate. And they cover this huge story about the people being enslaved to the people leaving and then their time in the wilderness in about 90 minutes or so. So I'm reckoning I've got about 90 minutes as well. So in the story that are shown in the films, there's so much detail that is missing. And really, I'm not going to cover the whole story. I just want us to pick out a couple of ideas. Firstly, in verse 11 from the passage that Gareth read, it says, But Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? You know, in this passage, we learn that Moses feels inadequate. He feels he's not worthy. You know, he's been in the desert for 40 years, hiding from his past in the wilderness. And Moses, it says, he feels inadequate for 3 simple reasons. It says, because of his weakness. It says, who am I? Because of Pharaoh's power. He says, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? And thirdly, because of the scale of the task that he's been given. Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? So Moses' question really is, who am I? Who am I? And I think it's a really understandable, it's a good question. And I was thinking about this, I was thinking about our modern culture, and as a teacher at school, we deal with this sort of thing all the time. Who am I? The kids are asking. You know, this search for identity is so obvious. It's one that has become so fluid as well and malleable as well in society. You know, a century ago, who you were was determined by where you had grown up, by who your parents were. It was the norm to do the same job as your mother or father, to live in the same area, if not the same street. And that was who you were. But now we can invent ourselves, reinvent ourselves almost on a daily basis. We can switch careers, we can travel and move around. We join subcultures. We have these online identities. And it's a world of opportunity where we can be whoever in some ways we want. But this world of opportunity also creates anger, angst, anxiety. You know, there's nothing really bigger than us now to help us form that identity. We have the breakdown of families, of national identities. There's a breakdown in the belief in God. And all of that means we ourselves become the measure, the master of our own lives. In the past, we might have had a humble job, but we were proud to be a part of that company, proud to be a part of that nation. But those corporate things don't matter so much now. Identity now is down to me. Identity is now something I achieve rather than something I receive. And when we're left to our own devices to create our own identities, I kind of think we enslave ourselves. We enslave each other. And the question, who am I think it's such a great question. Who am I? And God gives Moses an answer. God says, I will be with you. That's a really rubbish answer, I thought, isn't it? I was thinking, who am I? And God says, I will be with you. How does it help you to know who you are if you know that someone else is with you? It makes sense in my head. So I was thinking about it. Imagine my wife Claire, and she's walking down a dark alley. She is alone. She's scared. At that moment, who is Claire? Claire is scared. Claire is anxious. Claire is alone. But imagine I am walking with her. She is no longer scared. She is confident. She feels safe and protected. So when Moses asks, who am I? And God replies, I will be with you. It's actually a great answer. In fact, it possibly is the answer. God is saying to Moses that your identity, Moses, is tied up to God's identity. So when Moses says, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? You know, we might have replied, we might have gone, well, Moses, you're a perfect person because you were brought up in the Egyptian court. You will be able to understand what they say. And you know the Pharaoh. You know the workings of it. And you've seen how your people suffer. And you know, you've been protecting your flock, out there preserving them for 40 years. And we would think Moses is ideal. Moses can do it. And we would say, Moses, yep, you can do that. But God doesn't say that. God says, I will be with you. He is saying, I will be the one who makes the difference. You know, Moses does not need to have better self-esteem. No, he just needs a greater sense of God's presence. But for many of us, our identities are misplaced. They're unstable. They're fake. You know, one of the real common ones is, I am what I do. Our self-worth, our value, our mattering in existence in life is built on what we do. But what happens when it's time to retire? Who am I then? For some of us, it is, I am what I own. But what happens when that stuff is gone or it's old? Who am I then? You know, why do we keep on needing more stuff? Because we put our value, our identity in that stuff. You know, we will buy a house we cannot afford. We will drive a car. A car. That's like my car. We will drive a car we cannot afford. Wear clothes we cannot afford. To impress people we don't even know and possibly don't even like. Why? Because our value, our worth, is built on the stuff that we own. And if we are what we own, we are enslaved by our identity. We are enslaved because we live in a world where there is always the next new thing. Who am I? Maybe it's, I am a parent. What happens when the kids have left home? Who am I then? Who am I? I am in control. You know, we can be that self-made person, and for a while we enjoy being in control. But it's really hard work, because we're not really in control. Life continually teaches us that we're not in control. So who am I? And God, in answer to this question, he says, I will be with you. He's saying you can walk through life with me. You can base your sense of self on your knowledge of me. You can find your confidence, your worth in knowing that I am there for you, that I am here with you. You can know that I am with you, and therefore your achievements and your failures does not affect that status at all. I will be with you. Let me give you a short illustration that might help you understand what I mean. Imagine trying to visit the Queen at Buckingham Palace. You're going to be asked, who are you? In other words, what gives you the right to be here? You know, most of us are not going to get past the front gate. But what about Kate Middleton? You know, when she was 15 years old, she would never have got further than us now. You can see her there. She wouldn't have got through the gates when she was 15. But now she can say, oh, I'm with him. I married the prince. So who is she? She's Kate Middleton, Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Cambridge. And she gets her identity, in some ways, from her husband. And in the same way, we get our identity from Jesus. We say, oh, I'm with him. In the New Testament, God says, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Who am I? One of the children of God. We are the people who are defined by our God. You know, yesterday you may have been a great employee, or you might have had a terrible day at work. You may have been a superb parent yesterday, or you could have been an amazing child or possibly a selfish one. You may have been praised or mocked or ignored. You may have been mainly obedient, or you might have been terribly sinful. But if you have received Jesus Christ as your Lord, as your Savior, then you are a child of God, and nothing can change that. That means today you can go out with confidence, not in what you do, but in who is with you. Who am I? Oh, I'm a child of God because I'm with Him. I'm with Him because God says, I'm with you. You know, this is what we mean when we read in Romans 8. It says, what then can separate us from the love of God that is found in Christ Jesus? And then we have this long list of things. What can separate us? It says, can nakedness, can famine, can sword, can suffering, can angels or demons? No, nothing can separate us from the love of God that is found in Christ Jesus. Why? Because I'm with Him. Now, just think about how this, I'm with Him, attacks and establishes itself as our identity. I'm no longer in control. I know I'm not in control because I'm with Him. He is in control. I don't have to be in control. I can just breathe out and acknowledge that I'm not in control because I'm with Him. You know, if you think about it, and if we were really honest about it, the I am, you know, that blank that makes us who we are, if that thing was taken from us for a second, you know, I am a husband, I am a father, I am a son. If all these things could be taken from me in an instant, who would I be? But I stand here and I say, they don't define me because I'm with Him. All of my stuff, it doesn't define me because I'm with Him. The freedom that is found for me there is stunning. You know, I know life, it's not going to be easy, but it's okay because I'm with Him. And God, He's not this distant, aloof being. He's not. Let's just quickly have a look at verse 7. Look at what God says to Moses in this encounter. Verse 7 says, and this is God, He says, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and I have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their suffering. And maybe we've forgotten God or feel forgotten by God. We feel that God feels far away. Perhaps that is how you feel. And you cry out because of your suffering, because of your distress, because of your despair, because of your anxiety, just as the Israelites did. And you feel as perhaps they felt that God wasn't hearing them and that God wasn't interested. But God says, I have seen, I have heard, I am concerned. But then it gets even better. Verse 8, it says, God is saying, He says, I have come down. God is not absent. He has, as it were, rolled up His sleeves and got stuck into His people's story. He is going to rescue His people so that He can bring them into a good and spacious land as He has promised. And this almighty, all-powerful, this immense, transcendent God who is above us, this God of the universe, the sovereign King of glory, He sees, He hears, He knows, and He has come down. He is among us. He is with us. In fact, Jesus would later be called Emmanuel, which literally means God with us. But if we are what we do, if we're constantly running in the rat race, spending money, going into debt to build this facade, The invitation from the great I am is, come. I'll carry all that stuff for you. You don't have to be defined by these things. You can be free. Maybe you're starting to learn that life isn't easy, and life isn't easy. But the great I am says this afternoon, I will be with you. I will be among you. I have heard you. I am here. I will not let you down. Maybe it's you feel totally enslaved to what people think about you. So we're constantly trying to project this great image of strength. This image of, yeah, I'm going to get that promotion, or yeah, we're going to move into that bigger house or into that better location. We're going to get that new whatever it is. We're going to have this new stuff. We're going to. And really we feel enslaved and trapped. But there's this invitation from the great I am. Come. Come all who are weary and heavy laden. Come. And this freedom is available to all of us who will just lay down their yes. Confess that they cannot lift the weight. They need a spotter. And they can receive the mercy of God. That's what those folk who were being baptized were saying. They were saying, we have a new identity. They were saying, and this is our mantra, it should be, you know, I can't do it myself, and so our mantra is, I'm with him. I'm with him. Who am I? I'm with him. I'm with him. Let us just pray. Father, I pray that you would expose my own heart about where I place my identity. Show me who you are. I don't need greater self-esteem. I just need a greater sense of who you are in your presence. Expose in our hearts where we have built up these fake identities, where we are not in touch with ourselves, where our relationships are flat and phony, where we're surrounded with people and yet we're lonely, where we appear successful yet we're anxious and angry, where we are perpetually worried about being outed as a fake, as a failure. Free us from these chains. Free us from the things that enslave us. Free us by your mercy. Jesus, Spirit of God, help us. We need you. Amen.